Next up is Colleen Robbins. Colleen has been writing since she was 9 years old. And if she doesn't write often enough, she says the stories write themselves inside of her head, and she runs into the wall while swimming the backstroke. While she prefers to write science fiction, fantasy, and horror, she also writes mainstream fiction. Tonight, she'll start off with a selection reprinted from the anthology Bombshells, Stories and Poems by Women on the Home Front, and the selection is called Sandbox Warrior. Colleen.
This one's a little longer than some of the ones that we've done so far, so please bear with me. Sandbox Warrior. I'm off to play in the sand, he said. Give everyone my love. Those were the last two things Brian said before he left. But then, he always played in the sand. Brian and his brother were constantly in the sandbox when they were young. Tonka trucks, tunnels, and transformers, the remains of their mock battles, lay strewn across the sand. Tunnels gave way to trenches dug in the sand beneath the swings at the local park. My kitchen spoons did double duty as digging tools, vanishing for months before being rediscovered as buried treasure. My whisk broom saved buckets of sand from swirling down the bathtub drain each summer. The sand battles escalated, too. Arguments over whose toy was taller devolved into wrestling matches. The sand covered the victor, making him indistinguishable from the vanquished. In the sand, everyone is the same. Beneath the sameness, everyone is unique. A nice pair of life lessons. Brian grew and the sand got deeper. During a vacation at the beach, I looked away from him for just a few minutes. When I looked back, Brian had gathered a cadre of children, all busily honeycombing the beach with tunnels. He kept at it for hours, long after the other children lost interest, tenaciously determined to finish some master plan before the tide swept in and erased his work. When he finally stood, sand crusted on every part of his skin, and the water lapped a mere inch from his finished creation, a tunnel complex undreamed of even by ants. Sand piles gave way to post holes, and even occasional sculpture. Clay just didn't satisfy him as well as sand, though. After high school, Brian joined the Army. Adventure, travel, and college money, all three influenced his decision. And, of course, he managed to play in the sand again. One of his few letters used the phrase, playing in the sand. He was stationed in Kuwait for a year and told us nothing more, at least not until he returned home safely. Somehow, Brian had specialized in digging, detecting, disarming, and digging up mines, that is. I've seen pictures of mutilated children since then, children who stepped on mines while playing. Worse yet, some of the children were playing with the mines themselves. My Sandbox Warrior was making the world safe for children to play. They say that most accidents happen near home. That was certainly the case for Brian. An off-duty ATV ride with his unit buddies ended in a disaster. His skull split like an eggshell. Brian wasn't expected to live through the helicopter ride to the trauma center, or long enough for my husband to drive up to the hospital. His will to live was not to be denied, however. 3 days later, the doctors moved him out of the intensive care unit. He'd managed to set off all their alarms, twice, by trying to stand up and salute a sergeant from his reserve unit. We took him home with us 7 days after his accident, a titanium rod in his thigh and his head stitched and stapled so much that he looked like a baseball. My son, proud to be an American, forever carrying one of its symbols on his head. 6 weeks later, far surpassing the physical therapist's goals, he was back in his second-floor apartment and returning to work. We spent Thanksgiving with him, almost the entire family together again, and managed to create some happy memories. He called 2 months later to notify us that his reserve unit was on alert status. The next March, we got the dreaded call. We didn't ask questions, of course. The answer might have been classified. Instead, we trusted Brian to tell us what he wanted us to know. We know he's gone to the Middle East, but we don't know exactly where. It's likely he's digging for mines again, saving the world in his own quiet way, saving his friends, and saving that far country's children from a potentially fatal experience. We didn't ask. There's no question that Brian is in a dangerous place, doing a dangerous job in dangerous circumstances. There are a million reasons for things to go wrong. He's too tired, he's in the wrong place at the wrong time, he simply makes a mistake. Any of these could lead to his death. And of course, we haven't had any letters. He's never been good at writing home, or anywhere else for that matter. He'll tell us in his own time what he thinks we should know, probably after it's all over. But no news is good news, much better than the dreaded phone call from his superiors. He said, I'm off to play in the sand, give everyone my love. What can I say to that? Florida's closer, you know. What can he say? He laughs.